Now, on the Georgia vote. President Trump continues to reach into Georgia to fill his administration, while another Georgia lawmaker is all in on U.S. expansion.
We sit down with a state senator who is challenging his fellow Democrat for a congressional seat. Why Emmanuel Jones thinks it's time for new leadership in this Metro Atlanta district.
And our voice of the voter is a local couple cooking up some Southern hospitality. What gives them concern and hope about their city? All right now on the Georgia Vote.
From the 11 Alive studios, this is the Georgia Vote with Faith Jesse and Zach Merchant.
Well, good morning. We begin with developments in Washington that have people in Georgia taking notice. President Donald Trump once again has our state on his mind as he gives more responsibility to a former Georgia congressman.
That's right. We're talking about Doug Collins. He's already the Secretary of Veterans Affairs, but he'll have much more to do, at least in the early stages of the administration. This week, President Trump issued an executive order designating Collins as the acting leader of both the Office of Special Counsel and the Office of Government Ethics. Well, in those roles, Collins would handle things like whistleblower complaints and financial disclosures. One possible hangup here, the previous head of the special counsel's office, who was fired by the president, is challenging his dismissal.
And current Congressman Buddy Carter, who represents Georgia's 1st District that includes Savannah, also made headlines this week. The Republican introduced a bill that, if passed, it aims to authorize President Trump to acquire Greenland. The legislation would also allow for a name change from Greenland to Red, White, and Blue Land. Greenland is part of Denmark, and the Prime Minister of Greenland says the territory is not for sale. In a statement, Congressman Carter defended a purchase of Greenland as a U.S. national security priority.
Well, there is a very tenuous political situation playing out right now in the city of South Fulton. The city council there, they barred their mayor from city buildings because of what they call an unauthorized use of resources and abuse of his position. Take a look here, this video. It shows the moment police told Mayor Khalid Kamau that he was stripped of his privileges and is no longer allowed inside City Hall. Officers then escorted the mayor outside where he cleaned out his city-owned car. Well, this controversy, it all began when city council members, they questioned the mayor's spending, including international travel and office renovations. Council members say that he misused city resources and ignored policies. Kamau, who also goes by Mayor Kobe, told the Big Tigger Morning Show mistakes were made. He admitted to that, but he argued he wasn't the only one.
None of us were traveling the way that we should have or doing things the way that we should have done them. I was chairing this meeting and people were making assertions, that's not how the travel policy goes. And then someone else would be, well, that's not how the travel policy goes. Turns out we got 2 different travel policies.
Well, the mayor also told 11 Alive that he is heartbroken by the council's recent actions. And even though most of his privileges are revoked, he is still the mayor of South Fulton. Well, next week marks 1 year since the Athens community was rocked by the death of Laken Riley, a 22-year-old Augusta University nursing student who was killed while jogging on the University of Georgia's campus. Well, 11 Alive sat down with Athens Mayor Kelly Gertz on how the community is healing. He reflected on how this local tragedy became a national flashpoint when an undocumented immigrant was arrested and convicted in Riley's murder.
Being the center of political war back and forth across the aisle, what was your response to that?
I always try and center myself as a policymaker just in an objective understanding of what's happening. The political fireworks, those are certainly going on everywhere these days, and I just accept that that's a feature of this moment in time. But I'm conscious that just as we have to be thoughtful about what will make for a safe community right now, we have to be thinking about the years and the decades ahead too.
And be sure to join us tonight at 11 for a closer look at what's changed in the classic city since Laken Riley's death. That's tonight on 11 Alive News at 11. And this week, the state Senate passed a bill that supporters say adds teeth to federal and state immigration laws, but opponents say it will stoke fear in the immigrant community while targeting local government workers. Doug Richards with the 11 Alive political team has this story.
In our state, we have seen a politicization of the law.
The sponsor of Senate Bill 21 says some local governments are not vigorously enforcing immigration laws. if the bill becomes law, local government officials could be sued by people who think they were harmed by an absence of immigration law enforcement.
We're going to create, if necessary, a financial incentive for you to obey Georgia immigration law as a local government.
The debate comes less than a month after Donald Trump took office with a tough on immigration message.
You are on the wrong side of history if you're voting against these bills, and the voters sent you a clear message in November.
Democrats contend the measure would unduly burden local governments already straining with limited resources.
So which is it? Do we want to limit lawsuits, or do we want to weaponize them against teachers? This bill doesn't make Georgia safer.
They do have to follow Georgia law. That doesn't mean that a teacher is responsible for the harm that comes afterwards, as long as they're abiding by Georgia law.
The sponsor, Blake Tillery, spoke after his bill passed on a party line vote. Refugee activists were among those in the gallery unhappily watching.
Even for those people who are documented and don't have anything to worry about, this kind of environment just makes people feel unsafe.
Doug Richards, 11 Alive News.
Well, the last election season is barely behind us, but contenders are already emerging for the next round in 2026. In this week's Sunday Conversation, we sit down with State Senator Emanuel Jones, who is launching a campaign to unseat a Georgia congressman who has spent more than 2 decades in office. You've served in the state Senate now for 2 decades?
Yes, 20 years.
You're now looking at potentially a new job, though.
Yes, I am.
Tell me about that.
The 13th Congressional District, there's an opportunity there. I have already announced my candidacy for the 13th Congressional District. That seat is currently held by Congressman David Scott, and I am looking forward to representing the 13th.
Now, you're a Democrat. Congressman
Yes.
David Scott is also a Democrat.
Yes.
You are challenging an incumbent member of Congress from your own party.
That's correct.
Does that worry you at all?
It does not. And the reason why it does not worry me is because I don't think it's a secret to anyone that Congressman Scott has had some medical issues. Congressman Scott has been removed from his committees up in D.C. Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries moved him as ranking member. And there's been multiple articles that have been written about his issues that he's currently facing up in D.C.
When you say issues, I just want to be really clear. Are you talking about, in your view, cognitive decline?
Well, that is mentioned in one of the articles, yes, by members up there that have served with him. And his health issues, of course, he's missed a great deal of the session because of some surgeries that he's had. And you don't get removed as a ranking member from a committee unless the leadership deems you unfit to serve.
Up until this point, and as far as we know right now, he has not indicated in any way that he does not plan to run again. So this will likely be, given all we know right now, a contested primary, unless you know something we don't.
Oh, absolutely. I expect it to be a contested primary. I am ready to present to the public my record. I've served up here for the last 20 years. I got a long record of achievement and accomplishments. And I strongly believe that my voice will resonate out in the community.
I think if Congressman Scott, and I'm certain he's going to have plenty of opportunities to make these cases himself,
Sure.
But I'd imagine if he heard what you're saying now, he and his team would argue that that's not the case, that he's fit, he's able to serve. In a contested primary, you've got to imagine that those arguments are going to come out.
Sure.
What would be your response to that?
Well, this is not something that I've said. If you read what's been reported about why he was removed, you will see in those comments that they question, those that have served with him on the committees have questioned his fitness to serve. And that resonated with me. As a sitting member of Congress, when you get removed from committees, and that's where all of the work is done, is at the committee level. You have to question, how can you be effective if you're not able to serve on committees? 98% of the work that we do in the General Assembly, those bills originate in committee, and that's where you have an opportunity to make the biggest impact.
If you are elected to Congress, your top 3 priorities would be what?
the same things that I've championed here in the state. Gun safety, that's an issue that I have legislation pending. That's going to be top of mind. Public safety as it relates to our schools. We have entirely too many mass shootings across the United States. I believe as of a few days ago, the number was 17 or 18 mass school shootings that had already occurred across the country. Those are the top two things on my list that I intend to champion when I go back into, when I enter the Congress.
Now, we repeatedly reached out to Congressman Scott's team to invite him to respond to Senator Jones's comments in an on-camera interview or in writing. They did not respond by the time of this taping. Scott, who is now in his late 70s, was tapped to lead the House Agriculture Committee in 2020. He is still on the committee, but this year he is no longer the Democratic Party's leader on it. Now, a lengthy Politico article in 2022, citing mostly unnamed sources, claimed a number of Democratic lawmakers had concerns at the time about Representative Scott's performance leading that committee. In response, he told the outlet he was as strong and vibrant as a roaring lion, and he dismissed the criticism as a thinly veiled attempt to unseat him from the influential committee leadership post.
Well, straight ahead here is our Politics Roundtable, and later our Voice of the Voter is cooking up some Southern comfort while paying close attention to the needs of Atlanta's downtown.
Well, this week, a federal court paused the Trump administration's cuts to National Institutes of Health grants. U.S. Senator Jon Ossoff, a Democrat, has a warning about those proposed cuts.
But cuts to research, cures and treatments for ovarian cancer and brain cancer in children, where Emory University just had a major breakthrough funded by NIH research funding. Cuts to treatment and prevention of Alzheimer's disease. These aren't the right kinds of cuts.
Less than 24 hours after those comments from the senator, the Associated Press reported nearly 1,300 probationary employees at the CDC are being forced out. Senator Ossoff called those firings indefensible.
We know that Senator Ossoff will be up for re-election in 2026. We'll also be watching the Georgia governor race as Brian Kemp is term limited. And one potential Democratic contender is State Senator Jason Estevez, although he's not ready for that conversation just yet.
Well, right now I'm focused on this legislative session. I'm focused on addressing the issues that we have before us. And like I said, the fact that we have a literacy crisis in the state that has gone unaddressed.
State Representative Estevez, he represents constituents in Cobb and Fulton counties. He was speaking at an event to demand more funding for Georgia public schools.
And this is a good time, as always, to go to our political roundtable. Today, we have Democratic strategist Howard Franklin. He has worked on campaigns throughout the Southeast, including the 2021 campaign for Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens. He now leads the consulting firm Ohio River South. And Stephen Lawson, a Republican communications strategist who has served as a senior communications advisor to House Speaker John Burns. He's also worked for Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones and Congressman Mike Collins. Welcome back. Let's start here. We just saw Jason Estevez, the state senator there. This is kind of the season where the next election feels really far away, but also kind of not so much. There's a lot of teasing, a lot of flirting about who might be running and who might be running for what. Howard, let's start with you. Is Jason Estevez going to jump into this race? Who else is going to be jumping into the governor's race?
Yeah, great questions. Obviously, Senator Estevez made some news last week, flirting with the potential for jumping in there. Full disclosure, I worked for Jason and ran his first race for school board probably a decade plus ago. I think he certainly brings a fresh face to the conversation. I think a lot of the folks, particularly with experience at the General Assembly, may not be as sprightly, may not be as able to connect with younger voters, or even to bring some base voters for Democrats, like Latino men that we heard a lot about last year in the presidential race, back to the table. So I think he's got a lot of assets, and I think he's kicking the tires. Folks have certainly encouraged him. I think he'll be a name and a one to watch for the next several months.
On the Republican side, Stephen, right now, Attorney General Chris Carr has formally announced that he's running for governor in 2026. But there are a lot of potential contenders who are kind of in the rumor mill right now who haven't said one way or another what they're going to be doing, both in the governor's race and in the Senate race in 2026. Who are you watching for?
Yeah, I think in the governor's race, I think that conversation probably starts with Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. I think he's probably in the driver's seat if and when he decides to hop in that race, and I fully expect that.
And you have a pretty kind of an inside look on that a little bit, right?
Yes, yeah. I had the pleasure of working for Lieutenant Governor on his 2022 run. Obviously, he's got the conservative bona fides, great family, business background and record, and obviously very close to the Trump administration. I think that would help him in a race. But it's very early, obviously, in that race, and but I fully expect him to enter that race later in the spring. And then on the U.S. Senate side, obviously, any conversation starts with Governor Kemp challenging Senator Ossoff. I think he would be the candidate A, B, and C, cut above the rest. I think he's going to get heavily courted. I'm not sure that he'll do it, but he is the prime candidate. But I think beyond that, if he decides not to run, it could be a wide open field. Obviously, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, I think, is going to look at it. Congressman Buddy Carter. One name I would keep an eye on is Congressman Mike Collins, coming off of the Lake and Riley Act. I think he could be a dark horse contender for that seat.
A lot of people making a big splash. Talking about what's happening in Washington, I want to talk to you guys about a confirmation this week. RFK Jr. confirmed to lead HHS. We know that he's going to be overseeing several departments, including the CDC right here in Atlanta. What type of foundation or kind of looking forward ahead, what are you guys looking at with him now officially leading this organization when there were some concerns about his thoughts? Stephen, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it touches so much. He's going to be overseeing the CDC, NIH, so many organizations, such a large sprawl. I think it's going to take some time for him to get his feet under him. Obviously, this is a new world for him, but I think we need to give him the benefit of the doubt of getting in there. And, I think that what you saw in President Trump's election is that there was a small but vocal group of people who may not be your typical Republicans that have questions about, some of the food safety things that are going on, some health issues, and wanted maybe a different perspective. So I think it's too early to tell, but I think for now, we need to give him the benefit of the doubt.
A lot of people are saying that. Howard, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, part of the challenge here is that the assignment that he's taken on has taken such a turn in terms of the capacity to do the work. So I think that there are a number of issues, some that I think Democrats will agree with, that he's promised to tackle. The challenge is, will you have the civil servants, to do the work, to conduct the research, to chase the grants, et cetera? So I wonder, and I've heard this critique of some of the decisions that the Trump administration has made early on. You think you would give your appointees or your nominees the chance to get in there, look under the hood and to understand better how they might refashion these agencies, as opposed to bloodletting from the first week and making it very difficult to have the man and woman power to really affect some change.
There's been a lot of changes. We're going to take a pause right now, go to break. We'll see you guys after the commercial. We are back with panelists Howard Franklin and Stephen Lawson. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Let's bring things back to Georgia under the Gold Dome. A lot of movement as we look ahead to crossover day, not too far away now. What are you guys looking at right now?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, tort reform. I think that is, the elephant in the room at the Capitol right now. Obviously, Governor Kemp has come out strongly in support, but you have trial lawyers on the other side. It's going to be a fight through both chambers, but I think ultimately something gets done there.
Something we'll talk a lot more about as we head over to crossover day.
Yeah, 5-hour committee hearing on tort reform in the Senate, so know it's going to be a fight. School safety, I think, is another big budget line item, and the budget writ large, I think, is one with the $16 billion surplus, how those dollars get spent, and what that really says about the majority party's priorities going into 2026.
Tort reform is, in some ways, kind of a dry issue, and not to say it's not important, but for Governor Brian Kemp, why make this your marquee topic this session? Stephen, 15 seconds, Stephen.
It's something that's been discussed for 20 years under the Gold Dome, and nobody's been able to pass it in a meaningful way. I think Governor Kemp is using his massive political capital to put on the line to help people and businesses that are struggling.
Howard?
I think there's a larger conversation to be had about whether or not insurance rates come down, whether or not this is actually a business-friendly decision. And I know there's some voices within both parties that are, questioning what that'll mean for small business owners. So I think more to come.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. We hope to have you all back soon. Well, coming up next, we dig into The talk of politics with a side of pancakes on your Voice of the Voter. Well, this week's Voice of the Voter takes us to downtown Atlanta for a husband and wife duo cooking up some Southern cuisine. They sit down with us at their new restaurant, Betty Sue's, at the 5 Points Plaza. And while cooking up some comforting favorites, they're also keeping a close eye on how the elected officials in Atlanta are helping to revitalize the downtown community.
Hey, my name is Brian. Everybody know me as Chef Ball. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, born and raised.
Hey, my name is Daniela. Everybody know me as Ivy. I'm born and raised in Miami, Florida.
So what was your inspiration for all of this?
Kind of creating that culture vibe here with like Southern hospitality, great food, great vibes, great energy.
Who is this to you?
Yes, this is my grandmother, Betty Sue. She lives here in Atlanta. She's a major inspiration and like my passion and my love for cooking. So this is what we dedicate the restaurant to, Grandma Betty Sue.
My favorite, I would say the oxtails and grits. I love the salmon croquette because it just reminds me of home.
And we have a spread in front of us right now.
Yes, we do. Okay, I'm gonna start off with the fruity pepper French toast. My kids love it. We named it after my daughter, Dior.
That's good. When you look at the state of where Georgia is right now with our elected officials, how are y'all feeling right now?
I'm actually kind of happy with the city of Atlanta with Andre Dickens. He's an amazing mayor. I see a lot of opportunities and I see a lot of improvements that's been taking place within the city with us being downtown. You know, we have to work hand in hand. I think we're always going in a great direction. We're preparing.
We're happy to see what the new year brings. Yeah. And they're cleaning it up. And that's what we love.
What is the biggest concern for you right now?
My biggest concern is safety. The violence here in the city of Atlanta is crazy, you know, from school shootings to breaking into cars, you know, and I think it's the youth. I think there needs to be more resources.
I think it needs to be more programs put in place to show them what to do with their spare time. And us as business owners, we don't just need to look at them as consumers and the problem. Sometimes we need to reach out and, you know, just show them that we care.
What are you all most optimistic about?
I can say we are optimistic about the change that's coming in this area, because when we first got here, it was a whole different place that you're walking into. We see how especially you see how Atlanta used to be and where it's at right now, and kind of downtown, and kind of want to bring you back to that, you know, like it was a busy place down here downtown. It was a different space, so we think it's going to get back there, but we have to do our part as well, and I think it'll work out. Everything will be okay.
Food was great.
I'm sure it looked good. Well, thank you very much for watching us today.
We hope to see you back here next Sunday at 11 for another edition of the Georgia Vote.